Welcome to the Collecting Keys Real Estate Investing Podcast with your host, Mike DeHaan and Dan Austin. From wins, losses, horror stories, and tactics for optimizing your business, Mike and Dan take a real, uncensored deep dive into the ins and outs of running a full-time real estate investment and wholesaling business.
What's going on, guys? On this episode of the Collecting Keys Real Estate Investing Podcast, we have Brad Dumas from Cleveland, Ohio, ex-Notre Dame football player, respects LeBron, but isn't a fan. You know, I don't know. I feel like with Cleveland, it's always super mixed when it comes to that, but it's also like the one thing that everyone associates with Cleveland. So I'm sorry, I immediately labeled you.
LeBron James.
LeBron, yeah.
Are you a Jersey burner or are you a lover?
Yeah, right. So, you know, but I will say, I've heard it's been good for tourism, right? At least. Yeah, right. Yeah, that's true.
He did.
That is true.
He did.
But
and who else do you guys have to claim to fame is Johnny Manziel? What a superstar there.
What a stud, right? Canadian Football League.
He's killing it now.
I remember when he was the biggest thing ever back when we were in college. The Johnny Football, man.
Yeah, he was huge. But you know what? Our claim to fame over here is what was his name? Ryan Leaf. Yeah, you can also claim him. Yeah, and he turned into a great guy as a drug addict and ex-NFL player. Yeah, what a great.
Yeah, he went to my high school, and then he got what he get popped most recently for stealing steroids from AIDS patients. So yeah, that's how you.
He's trying to make a comeback.
That's how you know you. Yeah. Number 2 in the NFL draft to stealing drugs from AIDS patients. Yeah. Man, tough times. Anyway, Brad.
Sorry.
Yeah. Thanks for hopping on. So you have pretty, as you described yourself as you're getting around, you said you think one of the laziest investors out there, but you've still done pretty well for yourself. You know, you've accumulated 24 doors, mix of short-term and long-term rentals, and you're taking a hybrid approach to investing and creating wealth and passive income, basically using real estate as well as securities and different kinds of stock investments in a way that is, I guess, like comfortable with the sort of lifestyle that you want to live, but also still taking active steps towards getting where you want to be, where you said that you can potentially retire by the age of 40. So I'd love to hear about kind of your background and sort of how you got onto this mindset and how exactly you are continuing to grow and scale without having to work too hard.
Yeah. And Mike and Dan, thanks for having me on the podcast.
Yeah, sure thing.
Yeah, so got into real estate about 5 years ago or so. Started really small. My first deal ever in Cleveland, Ohio, a $26,000 condo that I was moving into myself as soon as I kind of got into my professional workforce. And like a lot of investors, the easiest path to buy the next deal was just to move into the next deal and then rent out the previous home. So I did that, 3 or 4 times, and then moving every year got really annoying. So I started looking at different means to invest, and I started buying small duplexes, 4plexes, 5plexes, so on and so forth. And now it's just kind of a steady growth rate where I'm looking to buy 3 or 4 deals a year, and not necessarily retire by 40, but be optional W-2 by 40.
Yeah. There we go.
That's great.
Perfect. Yeah. And so, I mean, that's great. So you started with, sort of, I almost like not necessarily like the house hacking method, but like the house trading method, right? Where you buy your first primary and you can get it with like a better loan because you're moving into it. It's going to be lower down payment, and, better interest rate. And then you just basically trade up to, did you like go to like nicer and nicer property, or were you just like buying the same kind of property in a different neighborhood, or even maybe, I know people even do it like next door because they're just trying to do the whole concept.
Almost next door, and all of them were right around like $50,000 to $70,000, and we got them in a time where all of those properties doubled, in the last couple of years with our big run up, and just held on to them. And like you said, good debt, low money down. Was able to find quality tenants, and a lot of them still remain in those doors today, and I still pretty much own everything I've ever bought.
Nice.
So did you have, when you're getting into this, like a specific buying criteria where you're like, well, if I'm not willing to live there, I'm not going to own it? Or is it like, hey, as long as it's cheap, I'm going to move into it?
So my underwriting is the reason why I call myself lazy. I think everyone knows the 1% rule. My criteria was 1.25. And if it met the 1.25, so 1.25 rule, I'd buy it. I didn't really spend a ton of time looking through, the CapEx, which I would do now. But as long as I could paint it, put some new flooring in, spruce it up a little bit, and it could be a home for somebody, I bought it.
Nice.
Wow.
That's awesome. So have you now done this with, I was only been 5 years. How many of the homes that you own have you lived in?
Oh gosh, good question. 5 of them.
5 of them.
All 5 every 12 months,
every
huh?
year. Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
That's dedication.
Yeah. No, that's cool though. I mean, that's a super smart strategy. So when you were doing that, I mean, even with that price point of home though, they were all in that same sort of 50, 70. Can you get like more like normal mortgages on that? Because I know a lot of lenders, they won't do mortgages below say like 50 grand. So are you buying these things cash?
My hardest loan I ever did was my first one. That was $27,000, and I put $4,000 down. And they had this regional bank had a LMI product that as long as the median income in this community was X, they would do the financing for it. So got in my first deal with like $4,000, $4,000 down. That it was a small condo. It's a rental today. It's paid for, but it's worth 80 now. So it's one of those things where good, cheap, no money out of pocket debt in the beginning, and just did that for a couple of years. And then I my next big purchase was a $61,000 single family home that I put $7,000 down on, and continued doing that year over year.
Yeah.
So it's very manageable.
You said that You said the first one's paid off. Now, was that part of just the cash flow paid for it? It was cash flowing so well, or do you have a strategy of paying them off?
That one cash flowed well. So, you bought it. I bought it for $27,000. I get $850 a month for it. Same tenant for the last 5 years.
Yeah. Wait,
2.5 rule.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. What was your payment even on that? Like $73? Like that's outrageous.
My mortgage was like $121, and I had an HOA fee that covered my CapEx, my water, my sewer, security, for like $200. So I had an all-in payment of $350.
Yeah.
Nice.
Are properties still like that in Cleveland that are in like good areas?
No, not in good areas. No,
not in good areas. Okay.
You can buy in depressed areas for probably under 50 still in some pockets, but this market, I've never bought a house for appreciation. I've only bought it for cash flow, and appreciation has just been the icing on the cake lately.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I've heard that a lot with Midwest investors. Like if you've been doing it a while, you never planned on appreciation, but the last 4 or 5 years have actually been pretty good for Midwestern investors.
Very true. Yeah. Yeah. And look, I don't have anything to compare it to prior to 5-6 years ago, because that's when I started. But I got in at a decent time, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
Before
it got too crazy. I know we have one of our friends, Drew Ward. He's also in GoBundance, and we were met up with him at a meetup last year, and I was talking to him. He invests and buys all in like central Indiana, and he was like, dude, this is like, I know we're in a bubble now because central Indiana is appreciating aggressively.
Yeah.
He's like, he's been buying it for like 10 years and nothing has appreciated ever. But now he has houses that were worth like 50% more than they were a couple of years earlier. No, that's cool though. So you made the transition out of basically buying primary residences and turning those into rentals, and you started buying stuff just like strictly as rentals. I guess, how did you come around to doing that? Was that mainly just because you were like sick of moving and wanting to scale? And like sort of how did that change your investment criteria if you're no longer looking to live there?
Yeah, great question. So I certainly got sick of moving, but I just got married this year, and my wife, then girlfriend and fiance, was also sick of moving. So we wanted to have a primary residence that was, nice, that we could grow into. We want to start a family here soon, and packing up and getting in a moving truck didn't seem appealing every 12 months.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah. So then as you were starting to look for properties, was it the same style of properties? Did you start looking for multifamilies?
It eventually got bigger. Yeah. So duplexes became a trend maybe in the 2018, 2019 timeframe, where we were able to look a little more strategically, like highly dense pockets and neighborhoods, places that had kind of the trendy service industry themes going on. So that's kind of our west suburb neighborhoods in Cleveland here, near the water, a lot of attractions, right? So started buying duplexes, and that changed our financing strategy. So maybe more 25% down type of loans, and kind of instead of doing 1 or 2 a year, we're probably doing 2 or 3 a year at that time. My W-2 income allowed me to kind of bite off bigger projects, and self-managed probably a dozen units or so until I hired a manager.
Perfect. Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah. So you finance properties, and you said you worked mostly with realtors. Did you have like a key realtor that would be bringing you off-market stuff, or were you like spending your evenings like cruising Zillow, cruising the MLS, talking to people? But what was your total acquisition strategy to start finding these places?
Yeah, it was definitely the latter. So I would kind of peruse the realtor.coms, the Zillows, and just again 1.25 rule, see if it made sense, see if it was a price point that I could afford at the time. Sent over 5 or 6 properties to my realtor and said, hey, can we do these 6 Saturday morning? I'm ready to make an offer, and we would, we'd go view the properties and start firing offers.
Nice. That's awesome.
Right on. Just the traditional way, just beating the pavement and picking up units. I love that.
Yeah. So how is your acquisitions fare this past year as the market started to get, a little bit crazy, like 2021?
Hot.
I guess when I say this past year, we're almost at the end of 2022 now. Things have slowed down. But during 2021, when things were super hot, were you still able to buy things with that same level of like casualness, I guess, or?
Short answer is no, but 2021 was an interesting year where I took a pivot to the short-term rental space. So I put my first short-term rental, and this just kind of tells you my personality. My goal in 2021 was to buy a short-term rental, and I had a short-term rental under contract on January 2nd. So one of those like, hey, let's just make this happen type of thing. Yeah. And it was because there was a great alignment. I had an existing property manager that was willing to stay on. I was absorbing a decent amount of bookings for the 2021 season, and it just felt plug and play where it wasn't going to feel heavy to me to do. So we did that first thing in 2021, bought an off-market townhouse kind of near the airport, which I think we bought right, good equity kind of going into the deal. I think that might have been it for the acquisitions in 2021. Now, 2022 was a very heavy year in terms of acquisitions, where we bought 35% of the existing portfolio that we own today.
Oh
year.
Wow,
nice!
Really turned it up.
Okay. No, that's huge. So I guess what was your secret to that then? Like, I mean, obviously the market was still super hot for the beginning of the year. Was this like now you were just patient, and as people started to realize that they weren't going to get as much for their properties anymore, that you were started to capitalize on that? Did you have to have a bunch of money saved?
Combination of both of those. So it was a combination of again the active income putting me in a position to buy. I actually raised a little bit of money from family, and I find this as a funny phrase, but I was making disrespectful offers to a lot of potential
respectable people.
Yeah. So we were able to put a few under contract that even with the run up and maybe the change in the interest rate environment today are going to be kind of long-term quality holds in the multifamily space. So we bought a 6-unit apartment building with a storage garage on premise. We got the other short-term rental under contract closing this month, which we got $100,000 under asking price, which I thought was awesome.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah. And a small fourplex earlier in the year. So it was a good year in terms of unit count and cash flow.
Yeah. Sweet. No, that's awesome. I mean, making disrespectful offers. I mean, I don't know. We're wholesalers. That's what we do all day. It's just you
can't get what you don't ask for. That's what I always say.
Yeah. Yep. And sometimes that's what you got to do. I mean, even the house that Dan lives in right now, Dan lives in this really nice, like giant
it's
house.
Low key. It's low
it's
key.
not
It's
low key. It's this giant, ridiculous house in like the best part of town that you get it. What'd you get it for, like $100,000 under asking, Dan? Because
it was 150 under their original ask. Yeah.
Yeah. Which you bought like what, 2019? Or was it
Yeah, I think so.
But basically,
oh, it was 2020. You're right. March 2020.
And you got it just because it had been sitting for like a little bit, and because we've been starting this business. Yes, you were used to making low offers, and you just shot your shot, and they were like, "Well, we like need a guaranteed sale because we're leaving the country, so sure." And they just accepted it, and then they were so grateful to have the house sold that they got you like gift baskets and like got your kids toys and stuff.
They did. They left all of their furniture, literally. Yeah. I still have it in my house.
Wow. Love that.
Yeah. No. Well, the context though is that I was doing that year. Like, I'll just shoot a lowball offer. I got one that people were so mad they refused to respond, and I was like, "Hey, your house isn't worth what you want, anyways. So like, why not shoot my shot?" And then sometimes they land, sometimes they don't.
Yeah. So no, that's
well, you guys
cool.
both know in this business, it's like one deal like that makes a big difference. So you just fire from the hip and try to knock down a deal or two. And if you pick up 50, 100 grand in a deal, it's a great win.
Yeah. I mean, and that can literally change the whole trajectory of your investing. Right. And that's what, so we have a mastermind, the instant investor program, where we have a lot of people that come in and they want to find off market properties. And it's always super challenging when you're starting out marketing and those sort of things, because it does take capital, it takes time, and you're kind of in this grinding phase. And, whenever you start investing, and really you kind of just need to keep grinding and keep shooting shots until you get that first big win. And that can literally change everything.
Right. It's like you've got to be at bat. You got to hit the base hits before you can start hitting home runs, and base hits keep your business running or keep you alive. And the same thing with like just buying your properties and adding them to your portfolio. They're not all home runs, but man, when you do get that home run, it's like, hell yeah. All those like $200 a door cash flow units are great. And now I've got, extra couple $100,000 in equity in this property plus $700 a month in cash flow. It's just like that home run. Exactly. But you got to play to win.
Yep. Combination of offense and defense. You're absolutely right. Yep.
Yeah. And it's like that with everything in life too, even going into like sports and stuff like that. Like there will be like, I'm trying to think of like a random athlete. I mean, Jeremy Lin, do you guys remember him? He had like 3 good games when we were in college, but he's still like a talking point for I think he played for like the Rockets, and he had like 3 good games. Like, oh, he's this Asian guy from Harvard who's good at basketball. And then he was no longer good after that, but he still like makes good money because he sells tickets, and he's like a personality now, because he just decided that he was going to start shooting one game, and it worked out for him.
My analogy to that is Odell Beckham. One catch that made his entire career.
Right. Yeah. The single arm one.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. There you go.
In a New York stadium where he had, 60,000 fans on primetime television.
Yeah.
That's the guy.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's cool though. Yeah. So I guess as you're looking at growing your portfolio, you're also taking a hybrid approach since you are a wealth manager. So you're putting money in securities. How exactly do you balance that? Because I think that's something, I know I personally, I'm not good at that. I tend to put all my money into real estate, but I do recognize the value of putting money into, other assets like stocks and those sort of things. So I guess, how do you balance that and make those sort of decisions, know how much to put into real estate versus that? And like, what would you give advice for other people on that?
Yeah. So here's my advice. And it came with, I've been in this business for almost 10 years. And the one thing I noticed overwhelmingly obvious on a lot of my wealthiest clients' balance sheets is they had real estate. They had a big piece of real estate, but they also had marketable securities and liquidity. And it made it really, really easy for banks, lenders to lend them money because they weren't over leveraged. And so one of my goals has always been to continue maintaining liquidity and not be the typical, real estate guy with, 98% of his net worth in debt structured assets. And so
on paper.
Yep. And, part of that is me maybe playing small and maybe playing a little safer than I need to. But at the same time, I think, I'm easy to lend to. I show them my W-2. I show them my cash reserves. I show them my, my marketables, and that that typically gets a lot of folks maybe comfortable with a hairy deal. And so if something, didn't feel right to the lender, I had some contingencies that got them comfortable.
Yeah.
Right. And so what you're saying is liquidity on your balance sheet when you are going to your lender matters.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It makes you more lendable. And of course, they love W-2 income. That's also a huge win when you're getting financing, because that's key. A lot of folks kind of overlook that on what does your actual balance sheet look like, because it's actually, it's not that hard if you can get unlimited leverage to grow your net worth, like you said, through leverage on your balance sheet, but that doesn't actually always correlate to cash flow or liquid cash flow. Like if one bad thing happens, then you all of a sudden can't cover it. And they want to know, the bank wants to know, like, what else can we take from you really easily? Marketable securities and cash.
Yep. Yeah, and it's not even the bank being 100% comfortable with it too. It's me being comfortable with it. I have all my spreadsheets, right, and my portfolio says it makes this much money every month, but somehow that much money doesn't hit my bank account every month because stuff just happens, right? And I did 2 roofs this year, 2 furnaces this year, driveway, and it's really easy for a lot of your cash flow to be absorbed in these projects. And so when your cash flow is absorbed from your CapEx, and you plan for that, right? And you do all that, but it's nice to know that you have kind of some cushion aside.
Yeah. And I always like to preach, like, pro forma is not reality. And it's all good if you've had a stabilized portfolio for several years and your CapEx set asides are filling up your reserves to where it doesn't even hit your cash flow anymore. But as you're growing and always adding units, it's really hard to keep that cash reserve built up, because especially if you're stabilizing units at the same time, like when you buy it and you're burning it, you need to pay for that renovation, and you sometimes don't get to burn it all out, and there's all sorts of things. And so again, pro forma is not reality. So it's a tough challenge as you're growing your portfolio.
Yeah, it really is. And I think there's a lot to be said there too. So even talking about like liquidity and being more lendable, the hardest house that it was, I guess the transaction that was difficult for me over the past year was for me to buy my new primary. Even though we had literally, when we bought it, like I think just that up to that point in the year, we'd bought like 30 houses, and I had a portfolio at that point of like 30 something units. And the lenders were just like, well, your debt to income is this. I didn't have a W-2. I didn't have a huge amount of cash that wasn't tied directly to my business. We had several properties that were like under rehab, but still had mortgages. And getting this house, I actually had the first lender like a week before closing back out and be like, yeah, sorry, your debt to income isn't sufficient, so we can't close. And I was like, that's ridiculous. We actually had to extend the closing 30 days. Fortunately, it was a new build, and the builder was willing to work with us for that, because we gave him some concessions, and start an entire new lending process with somebody that kind of like understood real estate investors a little bit better. And it was outrageous.
And that's a big thing. Yeah, you got to have somebody, a loan officer that understands like Schedule E and K1s and how depreciation works. That's a huge point you just made there.
Yeah. So much, because I have depreciation especially, and that's a token of knowledge right there, is making sure your loan officer is adding back, because that's actually what you're supposed to do. And sometimes they don't. They do not add back the depreciation, and so it looks like you're poor. It looks like you're making no money, which is a great thing from a tax perspective.
Right.
Yeah, especially when you're working with like the front person on your loan, right? Where they don't know, like they're the person that's like just a client relations. They're like probably making $45,000 a year to just like answer the phone and push paperwork. And the real decision maker, which they keep that degree of separation for a reason. So there's no like, bias that is established or any sort of like relationship with the borrower, right? To do that, to keep them neutral. But if the information doesn't get relayed correctly to the decision maker, it's going to screw up your whole deal. And like, you can't rely on the person that you're actually talking to going through that loan process to know those specific details, especially in times like last year where there was like, loan officers and mortgage companies were like real estate, realtors. Like everyone was like quitting their jobs to go and like sell loans, because that was an easy way to start making money during the boom. And now they're all gone.
So, it's funny how that works.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. So I guess as you're, continuing to go forward here, what are your plans and strategies and to keep on growing?
Yeah, the biggest goal is to be fully integrated with management companies by the end of probably next year for all my properties. And that's something that I totally missed the boat on. I'll be honest, guys. Like I should have did that from day one. Just be more strategic and more high level into decision making, as opposed to trying to be in the weeds and cut cut costs in areas where it didn't make sense. And I found the right partners. So I have kind of two pockets of my portfolio in two different counties here, and I've hired managers in both, and it's just freed up, allowed me to grow my active income, allowed me to be more strategic, and maybe spend more time networking with realtors, with brokers, with wholesalers, with you name it, and work kind of on the business, not in the business, and that's been a big fix for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
You can figure out that secret. That's huge, especially with the managers. That's been our biggest struggle with our portfolio. We have 48 units between the two of us, and we have a couple different property managers just because a couple different geographic areas, and man, it is so difficult. Yeah. Like as recently as I had a couple of properties of mine that I couldn't rent out. Well, I guess the property manager couldn't rent them out for like 2 months. And I was like, what is going on here? So I went to the house on a Saturday, took a bunch of photos, put them up on Zillow myself, and had them rented and paid literally by Monday. And I was like, okay.
Yeah, it's not that bad. It's not that. It shouldn't be that hard. Do you have, Brad, any tips when you're looking and vetting out your property managers?
So definitely finding somebody that's like pro scaling, right? So I'd rather have somebody be investor minded than charge 1 percentage point less. I just want to have my philosophy is never step over dollars, pick up pennies, and
right.
There's a lot of people in this industry that try to find the guy who charges 6% as opposed to 10%, and they charge $150 every time they go, answer a service call. They don't pick up their phone on Wednesday at 3:00. It's communication's huge, right? So I just want to know what's going on with the properties, what their strategy is. Send me a monthly report, and then let me be on with my life. And I think I found that in both my markets.
Nice.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, you made a good point. Looking for the cheapest property manager. Real estate investors kind of personas to known to be cheap people, and cheap is never ever the right way to go with your property manager, with your contractors, anything. It just doesn't ever work out. I've tried to be cheap, and it never. With your realtor, exactly. Nothing works out when you go cheap.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite things about last year was all these people that didn't understand that, sure, they could go and list with a 1% realtor because it would, save them X amount. It's but then you look and you're did they take these photos with a baked potato? Did they actually know what a house looks like? Because it would just be so bad. And they'd be no one wants to buy my house, even in this market. Right. It's you kind of messed up.
Yeah. And that being said, though, you also have to work for your money. Yeah. So there's people jumping into the game as loan officers and real estate agents, and they didn't have to work for it. They just had endless leads, and now you have to work for it. And those ones that worked their butt off and were charging full commissions on whatever they were selling are the ones that are going to continue to operate.
Yeah, exactly.
The market always disciplines, the folks that are unprepared to do the work. So
that's so great.
We're going to come into this market in the next 6 months where all those realtors and mortgage officers that were ignoring investors because we're a pain in the ass, they're going to be calling us now. So it's going to be a market shift.
Yeah. When, I had a guy actually ask me something recently. He texted me and said something about, how's business or whatever. And I was like, oh man, I still have hungry buyers out there. And he's like, really? Well, what do you mean that you have hungry buyers? And I said, well, flippers still got to flip. If you're a flipper, you're going to flip. And if you're an investor, you're going to buy things. It just has to be a good deal. Just like any other time in the market. If it makes sense for you yesterday, it might make sense for you today, just at different pricing. And so there's still hungry people out there. And those are the ones that are going to consistently buy and help those agents and loan officers you just talked about.
Yeah.
Yep. 100%.
Exactly. And with real estate, the people that are the wealthiest and have the largest portfolios, I think the number one thing they're going to universally all have in common is they just never stop buying. Up market, down market, whatever. They just kept going. Sure, things get weird for a little bit. Sure, they have to adjust their buying criteria, but it's a long game. It's consistency over time. And sure, you can every now and then you can have like a crazy market that allows you to get a little bit lucky and, maybe make some money quick. But really, if you want true wealth, you want to be like the guy that's 80 years old, that's worth $100 million, because of all your real estate. Like that's going to take a long time to build. It's going to require a lot of consistency.
Yeah. You just have to adjust your criteria. I was at 4 a.m. this morning feeding my son and got down this weird rabbit hole. And I was looking at the Fred graphs on my cell phone while I'm holding the bottle and all that. And they say you should have 30% of your income go towards housing like that. If you go above 30%, you start getting into where you're cash strapped or you're financially unstable. And so I was like, well, if that's the case, well, then if you look at the average household income or the median household income of like $71,000 across the entire nation, that's right in the middle, 50% below that, and 50% people make above that. You look at that, they can generally afford max of $1,725 a month. And so if you just look at principal and interest between last year's rates and today's rates, that's a $400,000 house down to a $260,000 house, not including taxes or insurance.
Yeah. That's crazy.
So now that's your buying criteria now. And if it was a $400,000 house last year, go buy it for $260.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sorry. That's the truth.
So no, that's awesome. Right on, Brad. Well, as we sort of start to get to the end here, we'd love to go into our guest questions that we always ask. So first off, the crowd favorite question: what is your craziest real estate investing story?
My first ever rental, my small condo I rented to my first tenant. 10 months later, I was given my first suit. So she tried suing me for not returning a whole security deposit. So, it was I ended up settling it within 10 days or whatever, but it's just, this is what every rental is going to be. My head starts spinning. Like, do I really want to do this? You start getting worried because I didn't have any real money then. And so that was the wild one.
Yeah. So she sued you for not giving all the deposit back. So you didn't give her back like $75 and she.
Yeah. The suit was over like literally $500.
Yeah. Oh my God.
It probably cost almost that just to file it with the county or whatever.
Yeah. I think she had a family member that was an attorney. I don't know. But,
oh my God.
Yeah.
I'm going to get you.
With tenant laws in Ohio, are those things typically, I guess, is it favorable towards tenants there or more towards landlords?
The one thing I'll say that is really good is we don't have rent control here, which I think is a good pro. But we have a lot of, I guess, Section 8 or subsidized housing here that is very tenant friendly. But it's in a market where it has a price point. We have a lot of investors, so I'd say it's pretty 50-50 across the board.
Gotcha. Okay.
Gotcha.
Yeah, because Washington, where we are, is very pro-tenant, which, if you go through the process and you go by the books, really isn't that bad, to be completely honest. We've had to evict a couple people, but
it's terrible when you compare it to places like Texas.
Yeah, Texas, where you just you can send in
rip them out of there.
Your drywaller who's freaking stacked to go and throw them out, but you can't do that.
You compare it that way.
Yeah, but here, one of the problems is they have like a tenants union that is, part of the whole government organization, right? And they will actually, so like that situation, if they wanted to take a landlord to court and they had cause to do that, like they will actually have it paid for, and then the landlord will
by the state,
by the state, and the landlord will actually have to come out of pocket for their side of it. As like people have incentive just to pursue everything that they can. The only plus side is that the Washington Tenant Union website and rules and regulations are so freaking confusing that they make it so hard for people to figure out.
They don't know if you're in the right or wrong as a landlord. I've gone there trying to find answers for myself, and I'm like, God, I should know this.
Well, it's hard for landlords, but it's also hard for tenants. So
totally.
At least that's the equal playing field, is you have to be highly committed, and even the most dirtbag of person, like they'll eventually just be like, I don't know, man, this seems like a waste of time for $500.
Exactly.
So,
I'm sure
awesome.
as the unit count increases, I'll probably spend more money and time into screening. But unless you're a total piece of shit, most people can have a good job, pay their rent, move on. it'd be okay.
It's not that hard to find them. It really isn't. I don't know how so many landlords find all the shitty tenants, but I've never had a problem finding a good tenant.
It's because they have shitty properties, so it attracts them and they don't verify. I mean, like the only bad tenants we've had are ones that we inherited with properties that we bought.
Yep. Totally. So, 100%.
Cool. All right. So next question, what is one piece of advice you would give either for a new investor looking to get started or a small investor looking to take their investment to the next level?
For the one getting started, just do one deal. Just do it. Just doesn't have to be, the Great White Buffalo deal. Just do a deal. Just do one and get it under your belt. Learn the systems. Learn for that first year on what it feels like owning real estate, and then consistently try to talk with people that are like that next base ahead of you, that next step ahead of you. Because the reality is a lot of real estate people like talking about real estate, and they're okay to share their information. It's not a zero-sum game. Everyone can win. Everyone can own. And, that's talk to mentors.
Yeah, there you go. Perfect. I love it. Super sound pieces of advice. Last question, where can people find you and follow along if they feel so inclined, or where can people contact you if you want anyone to do that?
Yeah, Instagram's probably easiest. It's Brad Dumas, @Brad Dumas, and then email at Bradley Dumas, BradleyDumas @iCloud.com.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, guys, for listening. And thanks so much, Brad, for coming on the show. If you guys enjoyed this podcast, please go and leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen to your podcast and share it with someone who also might be starting to grow a portfolio or could relate to Brad. And feel free to reach out to Brad too. He is doing things in, I think, a very, I would say, smart way and structured way that, sure, he might be, he said, as he said in his own words, a little bit lazy. He's going like a little bit slow, but I also guarantee that he's definitely not going to get bit like some of us that are
it's not fancy. Yep. Just doing what you're supposed to, one foot in front of the other, right? Consistency does help.
Exactly. Yep. All about that consistency. So awesome. So thanks so much for listening, guys. And we'll talk to you guys next week.
Yeah. See ya.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for listening. Please leave us a review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. And check us out at collectingkeyspodcast.com for tips and guides on starting your own real estate investment and wholesaling business.